Hello, everyone. It is time for a story of hope. I know you guys all have your favorites with me. Let's see, I go live every week, and always once a month there's a story of hope. Then once a month there's a Ask Me Anything, usually with a topic. Ask me anything about nutrition or food. And then there is always a book club. And yeah, there's so many great things. So this time we're doing a story of hope. And I got a story of hope here for you. Baby girl right there. And this is a case where, you know, I tend to work with women of all ages. A lot of you guys know me as like someone who helps women even into their mid to late 40s bring through babies, but women of all ages come to me with fertility challenges. And this is one of my younger clients, which I think is a really good highlight to show you that women of all ages deal with fertility challenges and are told similar things like your eggs are bad, or you need to do IVF, or you're in premature menopause, you know. And so those of you that are brand new to me, first of all, welcome. And then second of all, I'm Aimee of AimeeRaupp.com, and I am a fertility detective, and I've been helping women get and stay pregnant for a very long time, almost 2 decades at this point. And yeah, so I love to share these stories. They are right from my clinic or my coaching. This was a coaching client of mine. So she came to me at the age of 30 years old. And so this is her new patient paperwork. This is before I was completely digital, which I went completely digital kind of like last year. So I still have all written notes on her. And then I have a bunch of emails open up from her too on my desktop right here. So when you see me look this way, I'm like reading things from here. But first, what I always like to do in the story of hope is go through the initial patient information. Like, so what she came to me, what her complaints were. So she's 30 years old. What is the main reason you are seeking treatment? Fertility challenges and scanty period. She started working with a Chinese medicine doctor just 2 months prior to coming to me, which this was November of 2019. Acupuncture twice a week for 2 to 3 months. She was stopping during her luteal phase because she was worried that acupuncture wasn't good for her luteal phase, which I told her acupuncture is perfectly fine and safe in the luteal phase. Her breakfast was scrambled eggs. Then for lunch, she would have chicken and a salad. Dinner, she would just have soup. And then she always had a homemade gluten-free dessert every night. She drank 1 liter of water a day. She preferred cold drinks over hot drinks. Her primary emotions were anger, worry, and joy. And she really liked anything that was physically challenging that would bring her pleasure. But I don't have a hobby. She had some trauma in her life that I don't feel like it's mine to share, but went through some trauma about 10 years prior, and it still weighed on her. She was seeing a therapist for it. She was exercising 5 times a week for 1 hour each interval. That's a lot, especially for someone with scanty periods. And she was only sleeping 6 hours a night. She did not work, so she did not have a stressful job, but she did have a 3-year-old, which I consider that work and stress. And so she was a full-time mom. She drank 2 to 3 cups a day of black tea. No alcohol. She ate sugar daily. MD's diagnosis, potential premature ovarian failure, although it was interesting, like her AMH and her FSH weren't indicating of that. I don't know why he said that, but one of the tests was actually, which is like something that's really important for all of us, is like one of her FSH tests were not taken at the proper time. So it was higher, and then her AMH appeared low, but it was a cycle after he put her on a pretty high dose of Clomid, and it caused a really scanty period and her to not ovulate. And so her AMH went really low. And so like working diagnosis is maybe premature ovarian failure, which is just, you know, I hate that diagnosis. I think it's such a shitty thing to say. 9 out of 10 times it's diagnosed based on improper testing and testing done at the wrong times of the cycle. I just had a girl yesterday that was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure while she was still on an IUD. Someone did blood work on her and told her that she was in premature ovarian failure and she was on an IUD. So she wasn't ovulating, so of course her numbers were skewed. Could you imagine? Like whoever that doctor was should lose their license, in my opinion. It's completely unethical. And like, do your homework. I believe I started having a scanty period 6 months ago. No operations, no illnesses, but daily suffers with headaches, sinus congestion, dry scalp, dizziness, never sweats, cold hands and feet, really fatigue. She checked 3 times. Fatigue was a big concern for her. Wants to sleep a lot, always bloated, always constipated, no sex drive. And her periods were coming every 28 to 29 days. They were super light, only 2 days, but she was only wearing a panty liner. And she checked off fertility challenges 3 times. And she had 1 child that was 3 years old. And they'd been trying at this point for a year and a half when I meet her. So 30 years old, trying for a year and a half. And she's now done a few timed intercourse with Clomid and letrozole. Let me just I went through all the notes. I just want to, that's 3, that's 2. Here's 1. Okay. So she had seen like a naturopath, and they recommended dietary guidelines were plenty of fruits and vegetables, reduce saturated fat and use olive oil, reduce dairy products, this weren't my recommendations, this is what she came to me with, snack on avocado, pumpkin seeds. I thought that was great. And then they were giving her this meal replacement smoothie, Lean 95, which I think had soy in it, so I did pull it. She was on like a prenatal, she was on DIM. Someone put her on DIM, which is to reduce estrogen levels. Now, in a woman that has a scanty period and is only 30 years old, that's not the smartest thing to put her on. So that I removed immediately. She was only on 1,000 milligrams of omega. She was on a mitochondrial support supplement, enzymes, probiotic, and then she was also given pregnenolone, which is a precursor for DHEA. And the doctor wanted her to do some thyroid testing. And so she'd also, when we started working together, we did a Dutch test. She had a Nutraval test done. Thyroid, no one had checked her thyroid, which I thought was fascinating. But yet they were willing to, push her to a diagnosis of premature ovarian failure without checking her thyroid. And so my very first intake with her, so she did 5 coaching sessions with me. She was in my eCourse. So scanty period started about 4 months ago after she did multiple rounds of Clomid and letrozole. So she said this was Clomid letrozole induced. Clomid is more likely to do this because it really thins the lining. And she exercises 5 times a week, 1 hour at a time. So right away, that was the first thing I addressed, that she needed to cut back on her exercise, because I also asked her, how do you feel after you exercise? And she said, even more tired. But I do it because since her 3-year-old, she has gained weight that she can't seem to lose. And so I think that's why this other practitioner put her on DIM, thinking that excess weight meant excess estrogen. Without though running a Dutch test on her. And so when we did the Dutch test, now I'm jumping around, but when we did the Dutch test, she was super low on estrogen. And the DIM could have actually worsened things. So the DIM, the Clomid, and the over-exercising were probably the main culprits in causing this woman's really scanty periods that were then now causing her to have anovulatory cycles, and obviously delaying the trying to get pregnant part. She had just finished module 1 when we did our first call, and she said module 1 of my eCourse was the biggest takeaway about learning to believe in my body again. She said, I've lost a lot of faith in my body. She then told me about her first pregnancy. It took a couple months to get pregnant, but the pregnancy itself was easy. She breastfed for only 2 months. And then she's not sure when her period came back, but she said it probably was after a year. And then around a year and a half later, after giving birth to the first child, they started trying to conceive regularly. And so at this point, she's now a year and a half into trying, and nothing's happening. And she had just started acupuncture, like I said, and her period is very scanty for as far as she can remember the last 5 months, but it could have been longer. So she just started seeing an acupuncturist who was having her drink, which I kind of liked this concoction, ginger with dark brown sugar. And I said, instead of the sugar, add molasses, because we love that in Chinese medicine for building blood. And I added in bone broth, 4 to 8 ounces a day. And I told her to add the ginger and the molasses to that. Let's see, on the hormones with the Clomid and the letrozole, she got really bad PMS and cramping. And she doesn't always see cervical mucus either with ovulation. So her most recent period, when I first saw her, was only 2 days long, bright red, no clots, no cramps, and just filling a panty liner. So super duper light flow of a period, which immediately tells me blood deficiency, which in Chinese medicine, there is no such thing as estrogen, but typically I'm thinking estrogen deficiency. And then when I really see no cervical mucus, I also think that there's just not enough juice to create a thick, healthy lining or to create a juicy, healthy follicle. And so she was, when she got pregnant the very first time 3 years ago, about 110 pounds, tiny girl. And now she's 134 pounds. Is that right? Yeah. And so she wanted to try to get back down to that weight. And I said, why don't we just shift the diet, cut back on I think, and there's a lot of data now to suggest too, over-exercising actually can not allow us to lose weight. And so I think she was one of those cases. So energy low during exercise. I push myself, but less drive possibly, because now I'm just exhausted, but I still do it for the hour because I really want to lose the weight. She started cutting out gluten. And when she did, she noticed her bowel movements got more regular. Probiotics also helped, but she bloats from anything she eats. But at this point, she's still consuming dairy and soy and a lot of sugar. And so my follow-up recommendation to her, so that's all information I collected on the first call. Get in the bone broth, get on liver pills, use ghee instead of vegetable. She was using vegetable oil to cook. So I put her on ghee. Of course, eating protein within the first 20 minutes of waking. Be sure to eat every 2 to 3 hours after. Increase her vegetable intake. Start sending me a food diary. And she was also taking folic acid instead of methylfolate. So I had her switch that. And then I also had her increase her omegas. And so then we meet again a couple weeks later. She got a period. Oh, and I also said stop the DIM. She got a period, but she didn't have any PMS. So it's interesting. She stopped the DIM. She increased some things, and her PMS went away. The flow was better the first day, but then the second day was like what it's been, right back to panty liners. So she wore 2 regular pads the first day. So the flow already improved in just 4 weeks by making some of these shifts. So the major shifts were cutting back on exercise. We did 30 minutes 5 times a week. We removed the DIM. We increased the fish oil. We added in liver. We added in bone broth. We added in protein regularly. We cut out dairy. But by the time I saw her, though, she admitted to me that she only had cut out dairy for 1 week so far. So I don't know that the dairy had as much of an impact on the PMS because it was only a week. But no more constipation. And so this month getting my period, like again, she's in the eCourse. She's getting support from the community. She's getting support from me. I feel calmer. I'm reminding myself that I'm on a path and I'm getting there. She's not going to do any medications this month. She's just going to monitor. She feels relieved about that. And she found a brothery. She's excited about that. She's ordering it. She's doing a cup a day. She's doing the folate, she's doing the liver. And then what came up in the deeper part of the conversation, and I know you guys can totally relate, is what's wrong and what's preventing this pregnancy from happening. DIM is indole 3-carbinol, and people use it to detox estrogen, but it can really negatively impact good estrogen levels. And this girl was put on it by a naturopath, and it was, I think, negatively impacting the cycle. So her biggest thoughts, and you know, when I coach with my clients one-on-one, and any of my coaches, actually, we really spend a lot of time on the emotional piece and, you know, what's wrong with me? What's preventing this loss? And, you know, and then she was saying, I feel so tired too. And I was really worried about depression in here. She seemed very, you know, like she just felt like her whole purpose in life was to have like a bunch of children, and she was failing her husband and she was failing herself. And, you know, and then her weight wasn't what she wanted. She wasn't getting pregnant. Her periods were scanty, you know, and she just really was dealing with a lot of emotional pieces. And she did have a therapist, and so I was encouraging more work with that. We talked about anemia, blood deficiency, and then she was going for, like, she had her Dutch test she was going to do that month, and then she was also going, I needed her to get a complete thyroid panel, her vitamin D levels checked, I wanted her iron, her ferritin, her hematocrit checked, and we talked more about dairy, the emotional toll of this whole process. And then she said to me, I see a baby coming. I really believe it. Always cold hands and feet. And then we talked more about supplements. Sperm was checked. And then she told me, like, since starting your course, I'm overall much more relaxed. I'm giving my body the support it needs. I'm talking to my uterus. I'm visualizing it warm and cozy. I'm doing the meditations. She said, if I don't do the meditations daily now, I feel like something's missing from my life. So cruising through the group, she's doing the art of shifting her beliefs, the meditations again. We talked about IVF versus IUI. And she said to me, I feel like I have to do IVF. And that was like really, the one doctor was just really pushing her. And I think he scared her. And I think he said, like, well, listen, if your plan is to have like multiple children, like she wanted like 4 children, you know, then you need to get on IVF right away. And even though you're 30, like you're already having problems. And so we should just bank embryos. You know, it's very much like that mentality, which I'm never against. And I really support my girls where they're at. And resources were not a struggle for them. And so if she wanted to do IVF, she could very well do IVF. But what I explained to her, and I do to a lot of you guys as well, is that you can't rush into IVF if your body isn't ready. Like, this girl is barely bleeding. She's not even seeing cervical mucus when she's ovulating. Like, she's not going to have a good response to IVF. She's going to get over medicated because she's young. And she, even though her FSH and AMH weren't in the best positions, but they were improving. Like, we had them tested again, I think 1 month later, and everything was like totally normal at this point. Because this is now December. And so so we talked that through, and I said, can we just give our work 3 to 6 months and then we reassess where we're at? And she was like, she was willing to give me 3 months. Like, she was like, okay. So then the next time we talk, we get her Dutch results back. Let me just see. Where are the Dutch results? I had them pulled up, sorry, and then I did something. Cha, of course. Okay. Where did that go? I'm sorry. I literally just had them. Okay. Come on. Just going to do this. I'm like wasting our time here, people. Sorry. Cha. Patient registration. Nope, that's not it. Anyway, her Dutch results, her estrogen was ridiculously low. Her, here we go. DNA test. So we did DNA. We did, this is it. So her, she was in a different country, and it was so interesting how her Dutch results came through, because she had to do them with a doctor over there and then give them to me. And yeah, her estrogen was super low. Her progesterone was low. Her testosterone was low. Her DHEA was low. It almost looked like she was just having these like anovulatory cycles. And so, and mind you, she had done this in the December cycle, so we'd only been working together for a month. And so again, I just said, okay, this is just, and she said to me, this is further validation that what I'm doing is what I need to be doing. And she was, you know, she was upset that this naturopath had put her on all these supplements that were actually clearing estrogen when what she needed to do was building estrogen. And that's like my biggest thing for you guys is like, don't haphazardly take DIM or anything else that's going to like detox your estrogen unless you know for certain you are estrogen dominant. And blood work isn't necessarily going to show you that. You really should be doing the Dutch test or the urine test. She also did like an extensive, what I would call micronutrient panel. It showed that she was really deficient in magnesium and in amino acids. And so, you know, I already had her on a protocol. We added in magnesium, and then we added in, she didn't do the full elimination diet, but we did take out dairy, gluten, soy, and we were limited on nuts and seeds and beans. Beans were giving a reaction, so, but seeds weren't. So I added in a lot of pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, all fresh ground, pumpkin seeds she could eat, you know, raw. Her TSH came back at a 3. She had no antibodies. And what else? Oh, and then on the Dutch, right, her glutathione levels were low, which tells me her master antioxidant was really compromised. So I actually put her on glutathione, where most of the time I'll do NAC, but in this case I did specific glutathione. And what else? I was just going to say something else. Oh, she got on thyroid meds. That was the big thing. So then the next time I talked to her now, where a month and a half later, she's on all the things. She's taking her thyroid meds. She's 100% dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free. No bloat anymore. Go figure. No beans either. She feels 60 to 70% better. Her energy has increased. She was cycle day 17 when we talked, and she said she saw the most cervical mucus she thinks she's ever seen in her life. I was like, wow. So that was basically, now we're like 2 months into our protocol. And her last period, she had a lot more blood, and she also spotted 3 days before, which I'm not super psyched about. You know, I think I never want to put anybody down. I want to always trust, like Leslie Kuehl, whatever, however I say your handle is. Never put down any practitioners. I was really disappointed though that she put someone with her presentation on DIM without doing proper testing, and by the time she got to me, I think she'd been on it for 3 months, and so yeah, I think it was too long and improper testing. I don't know the naturopath. I've never met the naturopath. I'm taking it all second part, like hearsay, right, from my patient. So you never know. The patient could have pushed for that too. And, you know, like it's recoverable though. That's what I would say. Like all of these things is like, you know, no matter what, we can recover from this. And so I think that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. And that I also do always come from the space that we're all doing the best we can with the level of knowledge we have in that moment. And so, but for me, and I think it just speaks to clinical experience. It's like I probably have a decade of clinical experience on this naturopath. Like there were times in my past where I might have recommended things like evening primrose oil or borage oil or DIM. And now I'm like, absolutely not. I need to see the, or DHEA. Like, and now I'm like, I need to see the labs. I need to see the data. And then I decide. Because then I don't waste anybody's time, you know? Yeah, it's really good to advocate for yourselves. And it's like, and I think too, like, and this is me too, of like, now I'm on a tangent, but like, I used to always be like, I want to preserve your money. So I don't want you to spend the extra $300 on the Dutch test, because that's just a lot. You've already spent a couple hundred, you know, hundreds of dollars working with me. But now I'm like, no, let's just get the information and fucking come up with a plan, you know, and like nail it out. And so I think that's part of it too, right? But also like what she was doing wasn't working. And so I think that's another avenue for you to like be the advocate for yourself of like, okay, what I'm currently doing is not working. So there's something I'm missing, or I need to go back to the drawing board, you know, and you can do that with your practitioner too, of like, hey, this isn't working. Can glutathione affect your fertility in a bad way? I don't think so. Not that I know of or have ever seen clinically. I think glutathione can be really expensive, and I think NAC can nail it, you know, the same way. NAC is the precursor to glutathione. So, okay, so anyway, she's feeling great. She, no hormones again this cycle, timed intercourse. She did get monitored, timed intercourse. She saw a new fertility doctor who also recommended IVF. So now we're at a new doctor. She's feeling really anxious, emotionally up and down. Her husband really wants to do IVF, and he wants to store embryos. But she's like really struggling because she's like, I know it's going to happen naturally. And then why is this happening to me? She feels much better since collecting all the test information. We also went through her genetics. We tweaked things based on her genetics. So I always do genetics in Dutch with my patients. And soon I'm going to be adding in even more testing, probably the GI map and maybe a deeper dive genetic test. And then she said, I'm grateful I have found something to fix. So she felt really good seeing that estrogen was low and that DHEA was low. And so, that was the other thing. We did add in 10 milligrams of micronized DHEA. And she said, I support my health and fertility in so many ways. I'm feeling so much better. I'm coming back to life. That is literally how she felt. And that's what I saw. Like, she was so kind of gray and pale when I first met her and kind of like withered looking. And she just like filled up, and she was like laughing and having fun and like goofing around with me. Whereas in the beginning, it was like, she cried every time we talked, like the whole time, you know, she was just so sad, so scared. And so it really was like, I saw her come back to life. And then she, you know, she really wanted to talk about like, does IVF really increase my odds? And so I really just had that very frank conversation where I was like, listen, yeah, you could, best case scenario, you're storing embryos, and then you don't have to go through, you can have multiple children later in life. If all goes well, right? There's no guarantees with IVF. We all know that. And the journey's been so tough already. But then we ended the conversation. She said, I feel really relieved, and she was super grateful. And so her vitamin D also came back at like a 35. That was the other thing too I forgot to mention on the test. And so I talked to her about that with her AMH, and her AMH was still on the lower side for 30. You know, it was under a 1. And so the doctors were really pushing for IVF because of that, even though her FSH came back in normal range and her estrogen was now back in normal range. And her thyroid wasn't treated for all that time. And so I just felt like, you know, the D and the AMH are so directly correlated. Let's give it time. So by the time we talk again in February, she's decided she wants to go forward with IVF. And so we shift gears a little bit. I said, can you give me till March or April? And she agreed. She said she was going to start it. When we talked February 12th, she was starting day 3s tomorrow. I'm going to go in for day 3 tomorrow. And I was like, and it was because she just got her period. She felt like all these changes, and then she was let down again, which of course I get, and you guys totally know. You do all these things, and then like, where's my fucking BFP, right? And so that was it. I'm doing IVF. And so and again, I'm not against IVF on any level. You guys know that I work out of a fertility clinic with fertility doctors, like totally supportive of IVF. I just felt like we needed 1 more month to really gear her up. And so she agrees, and her husband was kind of like there in the background, and he was like, okay, like he kind of saw what I was trying to say. I was like, listen, don't we want the most bang for our buck? Like, and the meds, the last time, the Clomid and Letrozole really set her back. She's a totally different person now. Like, so now we're November, December, January, February. We're 4 months into her doing everything, and we're seeing major her periods, like super healthy. She's bleeding for 4 days now. She's filling pads. She sees healthy cervical mucus. Her sex drive is back. She's losing weight. She's exercising less. Her energy is great. She's happy. You know, she's feeling me. Gosh, what's going on? Okay, am I here? Someone comment. Make sure you let me know if I'm live. My phone was going like this. That's so weird. Let's see. The numbers are still good. Can someone comment and tell me if you still see me? Somebody comment or do some hearts or something. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I don't know where we lost me, but so she's feeling hopeful, excited. She's meditating daily. She's decided, I'm not going to do IVF this month. I'll wait one more month. Yeah, I paused, Crystally. So a call came through and then my phone kind of went wonky donkey, but I'm back. Okay, and so she's also decided, and I don't know where this came from. I actually didn't recommend this, and you guys know me. I'm the first to recommend stuff like this. She's talked to this new IVF doctor, and he has said he's going to put her on Lovenox post-transfer. And I don't know why. There was no blood work done, at least as far as she shared with me or told me. But she did have like a cousin who had a history of regular miscarriages, and it was in her head, and he wanted to put her on Lovenox after the transfer, which I thought was interesting. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure you need Lovenox. Like, we weren't even doing baby aspirin in the luteal phase. Like, there was no indicator, in my opinion, that there was any clotting factor issues. In my defense, or in her defense, and whatever, you know, full disclosure, I didn't have her tested for anything because she's never had a miscarriage. So I didn't think anything. And if anything, she was just super blood deficient. But so he wants to put her on Lovenox after the transfer. So I just said, all right, you know, I'll go along for the ride with that. So then the next month they do timed intercourse again. She does not get pregnant again. So we go to IVF. They retrieve 7. 6 made it to blast. And now as far as her medications, because I know you guys always love to know, he did do a low dose. He did 75 Gonal-F and then got up to 150. There was no Menopur on her, which I thought was interesting too. Just towards the end, he didn't start the Menopur. He did do estrogen priming, and of course, you know, then the trigger. So, but super low dose meds, in my opinion, which I appreciated because of her age and her FSH, and I think her antral follicle count was decent. You know, I should say decent. Her antral follicle count was good. Sorry, she had like 12. So usually in a case like this where the woman now at this point she's 31, they really would stim, like they put her on 300, 450 follow stim. They didn't do that, which I thought was great. So anyway, 6 made it to blast and all fertilized. And then the plan was just to do a day 3 fresh with the Lovenox. The first transfer does not take. And she is devastated, of course, as you can all imagine. And so that was then, we're now in, this is by the time the transfer, and it doesn't take, it's like mid-April. And so, so I don't hear from her for a while. Let me see. That's not true. We have a call the end of April, and we're fine. Now I'm on my digital. And we're fine tuning the protocol, which I didn't think there needed to be anything different. Like we were just going to do another transfer because at this point she only put 1 in, actually all 6, you know, fertilized, and we froze at day 3. We're not testing. So she has 5 more embryos left. And so she decides that she's going to put 2 in and same exact protocol. And then on, June 10th, you've been on my mind. I wanted to email you or message you, but I thought I'd wait a bit until I got my scan on the 24th. As of right now, we are 7 weeks pregnant. I went for that second IVF, and thankfully it's been a success. I got a positive pregnancy. I'm still doing the estradiol tablets as well, the baby aspirin. Oh, that's right. So we switched her to baby aspirin instead of Lovenox. And I'll do this through my 3-month appointment. Symptoms have not been the best, especially that somehow I managed to catch a cold. But I know it's all worth it, and I will recover from the cold eventually. And then about 3 months later, you know, just wanted to update you. Everything's going really well with the pregnancy. It's a baby girl. We're super excited, you know. And then I want to thank you so much for everything you did and your support. And she just said, she's like, I always knew that I didn't need IVF, but I'm happy that I went with this and that I have these embryos on ice, and it made my husband happy. And, you know, it felt like an eternity before when I wasn't getting pregnant, and now everything seems to make a lot more sense. And then she went on to have a healthy baby girl about 5 months later, just before she was turning 32. And so I know it's not always typical cases that I share, because this one is probably one of the younger ones I've ever worked with. But I also think it's a really good case to share to show you that even women in their 30s can have fertility challenges, early 30s, and have hormonal imbalances that need support. And I think she bounced back fairly quickly. So basically she started working with me in November, and by June she was pregnant, so 7 months. I don't know why the husband pushed her so hard in IVF. You know, that's not where I go. I mean, I do always support couples, of course, but I think he saw the toll it was taking on her, and I think he was really anxious to have like 4 children. You know, I think some of that was just cultural for them. That's just what they do in their culture. They have lots of children. And I think there was a sense of competition. They had a lot of friends that were already on their 3rd child in their early 30s. And so it just felt very, you know, a lot of pressure. And so she found a sense of relief. And she hasn't checked in with me, but my gut and my intuition is that she'll probably get pregnant, you know, again on her own naturally. But then she has, you know, there's a luxury. She has some extra embryos on ice. Yay. Oh, Rabia, I emailed you. I want to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to go. I have the reboot call at some point today, so I'll see you guys there if you're in my reboot program at 2 p.m. And I'm maybe going to shower between now and my 1 o'clock. Okay. Goodbye.